no one should be able to survive such a calculation. Yet a few hours are enough for the obvious to flip. Khalid tightens his horse's bridle, stares at a sea of Persian lances, and gives an order that seems suicidal. A few hours later, an entire army ceases to exist. This man, Khalid ibn al-Walid, general of the caliphate, did not try to escape the vice. He chose the spot where it would close in on him. He knows his own weaknesses, sees those of the Sassanids, and moves forward into the plain anyway. His officers speak of a miracle. Khalid, for his part, sees only a trap. Not the one being set for him, the one he is preparing. He notes what he is staking without saying it. Tradition places this day around the year 633, somewhere between the Euphrates and the Tigris. On paper, it's absurd. Opposite him stands a centuries-old empire, backed by well-established Arab tribes, heavy cavalry, officers trained by decades of war against Rome. Behind Khalid lies a still young state, just barely out of a series of tribal revolts. Yet at Walaja, it is the empire that falls back, and the small army that sets the pace. Worse, the few concrete elements historians manage to isolate show the same thing. Where a superior army should have crushed Khalid in a straight fight, it is that army that gets the door slammed shut behind it. The gap remains intact. Khalid advances in the dust, his fingers gritty with sand on his sword hilt. His mission is clear. Hold Iraq, which has only just been cracked open, and keep the Persians from gathering enough strength to take everything back. In front of him, the plain is empty, in appearance. Intelligence comes in fragments. He is told of a mustered Persian army, of Christian Arab tribes coming from around Al-Hira, of leaders whose very names blur in the chronicles. No one knows how many they are. Everyone knows they are more numerous. The officers murmur that they should wait behind fortifications. Khalid, however, insists on advancing toward Walaja. Hypothesis A, reassuring. People tell themselves that if Khalid won, it's simply because his men were more motivated, more carried by their faith, braver than Sassanids worn out by years of war against Byzantium. The idea is comforting. We picture weakened, demoralized Persians, hesitant allied Arab tribes, not very inclined to die for an empire that is nothing more than a carcass. Facing them, warriors straight out of the Ridda Wars, used to mobility, trained in sudden charges and the new discipline imposed by Medina. The result would seem almost mechanical. Strong morale against weak morale, fresh conviction against imperial fatigue. The battle would be nothing more than the logical conclusion of an unequal balance of will. This version collapses in one piece when we look at how Khalid's army is, for several hours, pushed back and pressed to the verge of breaking by the Persian frontal assault. Hypothesis B, more appealing because it seems technical. Walaja would simply be an intelligent copy of an already known ancient maneuver. Some historians compare the description of the battle to the double envelopment made famous at Cannae by Hannibal. Khalid would have studied, learned, or reused these principles, consciously or not. Pin the enemy with a solid center, hide mobile flanks, let him push forward, then take him from behind at the moment he thinks he is winning. The open plain of Walaja allows for these movements. Khalid's light, responsive cavalry is the ideal tool. Everything fits. He would simply have applied a proven recipe, with limited means but well used. The problem is that the more closely one reads the sources, the more this hypothesis flips. What looks like a plan inspired by a theoretical manual appears instead as extreme improvisation, cobbled together with incomplete information and very partial control of the terrain. Nothing is really stable, for him or for them. Hypothesis C, disturbing. What if Khalid's genius at Walaja came precisely from the fact that he controlled almost nothing, but accepted to fight in a gray zone that neither the Persians nor he himself had fully mastered? And what if his greatest strength was not to dominate the battle, but to tolerate a degree of chaos that his opponents, for their part, absolutely refused to let into their system? On the morning he deploys his troops at Walaja, Khalid does not yet see the invisible line that blocks him. He sees the dust sticking to his face, the leather of shields softened by the heat, the silhouettes of his scouts hurrying back. The report is always the same. They are more, many more. This time, the Persians have understood the threat. They no longer send just a detachment. They gather what they can, adding Arab contingents from the steppe, men who know every fold of terrain around the plain. They plan to use their mass to crush the Muslim center, relying on their local allies to bypass, harass, cut off the routes. Khalid, for his part, has no such luxury. He cannot afford to lose here. Behind him, Medina's authority over Iraq barely holds. The previous victories have impressed, but the tribes still look toward Ctesiphon. A single clear defeat, and everything could flip. The agreements concluded at Al-Hira, the secured routes, the fragile allegiances. The wall is not a fortress, nor a line of spears. It is this simple and brutal fact. He does not have enough men to both hold a solid front and stop the enemy from enveloping him. If he stretches his line too far, it breaks in the center. If he tightens it, the flanks are overrun. In every case, classical reasoning condemns him. So he does something counterintuitive. He accepts living for a few hours with this impossibility. He places part of his cavalry in the rear, out of direct sight, using the discrete undulations of the plain. He gives his infantry a terrible role. Absorb, hold, delay. The Persians attack. The impact is violent. Khalid's men fall back step by step, shields slamming into ribs, arms trembling under the repeated weight of the blows. Behind them, some know that part of the cavalry is elsewhere. Not everything has been explained to them. What they feel above all is this lack. Fewer horses at their side, fewer reinforcements in sight. Fear slips in exactly there. The wall is this physical sensation of deficit at the very moment when the enemy is pushing. The sources speak of a Muslim center in difficulty, under pressure. One imagines the leather cutting into the skin at the shoulder, where the strap of the shield rubs continuously. It burns, it saws away little by little, and with every movement that pain brings back the same idea. There are too few of us to endure this for long. Politically, nothing helps. The Sassanids, even weakened by their past wars, still retain the legitimacy of an empire. The local aristocracies still owe them years of protection and privileges. The Persian officers want a resounding victory to restore the image of a central power already shaken. They need to crush this expeditionary force, to send a message to the tribes. The old order still holds. Khalid sees this obsession. This is where his wall cracks. He understands that the enemy wants a clear image, a clean victory, a broken front in full view of witnesses. By clinging to this vision, the Persian generals deny themselves something. Falling back at the right time, accepting a tactical withdrawal, breaking the symmetry of the clash. They cannot bring themselves to let the enemy slip away or to avoid winning head-on. So Khalid lets the battle deform. He lets his men suffer in this red zone where everything seems about to give way. The center bends, curves, absorbs. The enemy, for his part, advances with too much confidence, convinced that mass will do the rest. It is at this precise instant that the wound at the shoulder becomes a tipping point. If the infantrymen break, everything collapses. If they hold for just a few more moments, another battle begins. Nothing moves on the surface, and yet everything shifts there. Military historians broadly agree in seeing at Walaja a tactical victory based on a cavalry envelopment maneuver, made possible by intelligent use of the terrain and the maintenance of a coherent infantry front. But as soon as they go into detail, the consensus cracks. Some speak of a long premeditated plan, others of an opportunistic adaptation to a Persian army less well coordinated than it seemed, and several point out that the figures and precise descriptions in the chronicles appear inflated, even reconstructed after the fact. What many refuse to state bluntly, however, is the idea that one of the major reasons for the Persian collapse may have been a psychological and political refusal to accept a battle that no longer fit the patterns to which their imperial system still desperately clung. When Khalid finally gives the signal, the plain of Walaja looks like a forge. The Muslim center, hammered for hours, is red with dust and dried blood. The men hurt everywhere. The leather strap that had cut into a shoulder at the start of the battle has opened a clean wound. The arm trembles, but the line has not broken. Facing them, the Persians believe they hold what they came for, an enemy front about to give way. They advance, tighten the pressure, concentrate their force on the precise point where they think they can snap the arc. It is at this moment of certainty that Khalid's cavalry appears, not in front of them, but on the flanks, then in the rear. The The sources describe an envelopment, a movement closing like a jaw. We do not know how many they are. We do know that the effect is brutal. The Persian army, convinced it is pushing back a cornered opponent, suddenly finds itself surrounded. The allied Arab tribes, trapped inside this movement, lose their sense of the lines, no longer knowing whether the way out is in front, behind, or to the left. The open plain is mentally transformed into a trap. Khalid has no more men than at the start. He has no miraculous reinforcements. What he does have is that lapse of time gained by the resistance of his center, and this ability to introduce a sudden disorder, controlled for him, unbearable for the enemy. Where the Persian generals sought a readable confrontation, he imposes complete jamming, and it is there that the illusion breaks, for him as well. People like the image of Khalid as absolute master of his battle, guiding each squadron like pieces on a chessboard. But on the ground, his messengers run through opaque dust. Orders are lost. Some groups react too late or too early. What he discovers that day is that his genius does not rest on perfect control, but on his capacity to accept that the battle is partially slipping from his grasp, while betting that the enemy will handle it even less well than he does. Perhaps before Walaja, he believed that victory came from the intrinsic superiority of his men, from their faith, from the righteousness of their cause, or from the structural weakness of a worn-out empire. That day, those certainties begin to crack. He sees soldiers on the verge of fleeing restrain their flight only because they have nowhere to go. He sees Persian cavalrymen, theoretically better equipped, panic the moment they realize there is no longer any safe direction. The battle ends in dislocation. The chronicles speak of rout, of countless deaths, of Muslim cavalry pursuing the fugitives for a long time. Beyond the possible exaggerations, one fact stands out. After Walaja, no great Persian army immediately comes to retake western Iraq. The breach remains open. The tribes look once more toward Medina. For Khalid, this costly victory leaves a bitter aftertaste. He has won, but he knows what he has risked. A line too thin, a center that could have broken a few minutes earlier, cavalry that might have missed its timing. The illusion of a predetermined destiny comes apart. In its place remains this darker truth. Often the victor is simply the one who can tolerate, for longer, a level of chaos that the other side cannot endure. And what if, at Walaja, it was not only military history that changed, but the way an entire empire discovered that it was no longer capable of withstanding the disorder it had itself created over decades of wars? The plain has fallen silent again. The wind lifts scraps of red cloth stuck to dry thorns. A split shield lies half buried in the ground, its leather strap still dark with dried sweat and blood. Further on, a Persian spear planted at an angle casts a thin shadow that stretches, very slowly, across the bare earth.